So thank you so much, and thank you everyone indeed for joining us for this live webinar. We are live on YouTube and also on Twitter. You can follow us on hashtag FinAccess. My name is Isaac Mwangi of the Central Bank of Kenya. I work on financial inclusion and I work at the research department. I want to take this opportunity to welcome you for this live webinar. Thank you so much for finding time to join us for this very important session where we'll be discussing about the power of the FinAccess service. And just to mention, we have 3 of our main partners who have been very instrumental in making this a success. So this event is sponsored by the Central Bank of Kenya, Kenya National Bureau of Statistics, and Financial Sector Deepening Trust. And in our midst, we are also privileged to have data solution providers, financial sector developers. We also privileged to have policymakers, researchers, academicians as part of our audience. So I want to welcome you and invite you for this webinar. Once again, I want to inform you that we are live on YouTube, and you can also be able to follow us on Twitter, hashtag FinAccess. Thank you very much. Just a quick one is to inform you that we'll have several presentations, and they will be very interesting because they will be shedding light on the power of the FinAccess. You'll also be able to learn more about the implementation of the 2021 FinAccess survey. Most importantly, we'll have an interactive session where you'll be able to interact with the panelists. There will be a question and answer session, and we also advise and call on you to post your questions in the Q&A section, and we'll be able to respond to that. Lastly, before I invite Tamara Cook to give her remark, I want to also say that we are happy to have you on board. And just to mention, Tamara Cook is a Chief Executive Officer, Kenya, and she has vast experience in financial inclusion matters, having worked even with development partners, and she's here with us. So I just want to take this opportunity to invite Tamara Cook. Over to you. Please share your opening remarks.
Great, thank you so much. So on behalf of FSD Kenya, the Central Bank of Kenya, and Kenya National Bureau of Statistics, I am delighted to welcome you all to today's FinAccess Datafest. FSD Kenya has been involved in the FinAccess journey since its inception in 2005. Since then, we have not only been part of Kenya's financial and digital transformation, we've also worked closely with our partners at the Central Bank and KNBS to document this journey. Over the years, with FinAccess has become increasingly valued by actors across the market. Policymakers, financial sector, private sector, and researchers look to the survey to give us data on areas of the market that are not captured by the supply side, helping us to ask new questions and understand ourselves in relation to the wider market landscape, both in Kenya and beyond. From an initial focus on expanding access, captured through the familiar access strand, FinAccess has increasingly shifted to capturing the value of finance in people's lives. Recent data and frameworks from FinAccess 2016 and 2019 highlight the fact that the financial sector still has a long way to go in meeting people's financial needs and improving their financial health. The data shows that people still turn to informal and non-financial tools to manage day-to-day, aspire towards their goals, and create resilience for themselves and for their families. And yet, we know that the financial sector has so much potential to add value here. Supporting Kenya to realize the ambition outlined in Vision 2030 of a healthy and growing economy that delivers value for all, as well as making progress on the Sustainable Development Goals. The vision of an inclusive financial sector that underpins FinAccess is potentially a win-win. For many of today's audience who work in financial inclusion, or as we prefer to say, inclusive finance, cultivating the financial health and vibrancy of these frontier markets will provide the new opportunities that underpin profit and business growth. Earlier this week, I had the honor to serve as a judge in the Central Bank's virtual Africa Hackathon as part of the Afro-Asia FinTech Fest. As we listened to the 15 finalists pitch their stories, those who had a deep understanding of their target market and leveraged data to better understand the needs were the ones who stood out. As the governor said, the global response to the coronavirus pandemic, which many of the finalists were focused on trying to help contribute solutions to, demonstrates how digitization can be harnessed to support vulnerable people, reduce inequalities, sustain livelihoods, and maintain our social fabric. Getting this right requires leveraging data, what we're talking about today, to understand how best to add value. So we invite all financial service providers, researchers, regulators, policymakers, and fellow development partners represented here today to sit with us as we listen to the presenters showcase the power and opportunities of this rich data set and be inspired to take the journey with us as we work towards the next survey. So thank you and welcome again to this exciting event.
Thank you very much, Tamara Cook, for those opening remarks. Indeed, it gives us good insights of why we are here. And now I'm privileged to invite none other than Raphael Otieno, the Director of Research, Central Bank of Kenya. And just to mention a few things about Raphael Otieno, he holds vast experience with international organizations. He has worked with MEFMI, as you know it. He has also been an advisor to the World Bank, the IMF. Besides that, he has a lot of experience working with the Kenya Institute for Public Policy Research and Analysis, besides being a staff of Government of Kenya under the Ministry of Finance and Planning. And therefore, we expect to hear Raphael Otieno opening this ceremony. And we are privileged because of it gives us an opportunity for us to also get insights of what to expect in this live webinar. Over to you, Raphael.
Thank you very much, Isaac. Distinguished representatives of banks and county governments, development partners, distinguished guests, FinAccess management team, ladies and gentlemen, it's a really great pleasure to join you this morning at this FinAccess Datafest. Let me join the Chief Executive of FSD Kenya in welcoming all the distinguished participants to this webinar. The Central Bank of Kenya acknowledges and greatly appreciates the immense contribution from FinAccess partners, the development partners, and private sector players who have been supporting the surveys in the past. We have previously received great support from institutions such as the DFID, Airtel Kenya, NIC Bank, Diamond Trust Bank, Equity Bank, Post Bank, amongst other institutions. And we are very, very grateful for the support that we have been receiving from these institutions. We are also grateful to partners who have worked with us after the main surveys to carry out further analytical work or to carry out deep dive studies. For example, Ocenfree and Busara Center for Behavioral Studies. We hope that many more partners will join us going forward. We have agreed as FinAccess partners to accommodate any special requests from partners should they wish to have the current data collection instruments improved to capture any issues of interest to them. This can be done either at the time of the main survey or through deep dive studies. And we will be willing to get any challenge from our new partners to capture any issues that they would be interested in. We are particularly looking forward to deeper involvement of additional financial sector players, as they have been and they continue to be significant players and contribute to financial inclusion agenda. We therefore welcome the participation of government departments, the regulators, other regulators that have joined us in this, the financial service providers, the development partners, researchers, and the data solution providers to this webinar. The forum gives us a great opportunity to appreciate the power of the FinAccess survey data by delving into practical applications and use case of the data sets to support financial services sector development. The webinar provides an opportunity for us to share in some of the value additions that the previous surveys have provided and the opportunities that the survey provides going forward. I am particularly excited at the proposal to deepen the coverage to the county level, as this will provide very critical information that we may not have collected in the past. Information that will certainly be useful for institutions present here, including the banks that may want to have special products that target the segments that have previously not been reached by them. Previously, the FinAccess data has been used by universities, renowned institutions such as the IMF, the World Bank, the Alliance for Financial Inclusion. And to us, we are proud that the data that we have been collecting can be used by such institutions because this provides very positive spotlight on Kenya. And therefore, the investors that may want to target Kenya, the development partners that may want to support development activities in Kenya are able to get very rich information on the different aspects of financial inclusion. Not just access, but the usage, the quality of services, and so on. And so we find this very important. And we hope that other partners will be able to join us in collecting this information that will not only be useful for the partners that are currently involved, but also for them to innovate products. This event, ladies and gentlemen, is taking place at a challenging time, not only locally, but also at the global level. With COVID-19 disrupting every aspect of our lives, the impact is even more devastating to the vulnerable in our society, including those who have lost their jobs and those who have had to take salary cuts. Evidence from the leading economic indicators, the surveys by Kenya National Bureau of Statistics, KEPSA, and even the CBK itself have revealed how devastating the impact has been to nearly all sectors of the economy, and even to our commercial banks that have been negatively impacted. While we are certain that Kenya will overcome this crisis, it is something that we cannot ignore in our upcoming survey. The FinAccess survey team will therefore modify the survey instruments to capture how this crisis has impacted on financial inclusion in the country. And we welcome suggestions from our partners and potential partners on any elements or any impact of the pandemic that they would like us to analyze for them so that it can help them in determining which direction to take with their businesses going forward. Now, I would like to reiterate as I close that this webinar seeks to build consensus on the need to expand our public-private sector partnership for wider stakeholder involvement, to enhance financial inclusion measurement for evidence-based decision-making, and ensure sustainable funding for the FinAccess surveys, not just for the coming one, but going forward. And we hope that more partners will be able to join us as we do the 2021 FinAccess survey and continue doing much more work in this field of financial inclusion. I would like to stop here, ladies and gentlemen, and I'm very glad that many of the banks, our development partners, our partners KNBS, FSD Kenya, are able to team up to have such a wonderful forum. Thank you all very much.
Thank you so much, Director Research, Central Bank of Kenya. Thank you so much for your remarks. And in case you are just joining us, we are live on YouTube. We also on Twitter. You could follow us on hashtag FinAccess. Going forward, I want to move and probably shed light on what it is that has brought us here. And as you have observed, the theme of the webinar is Charting Kenya's Financial Inclusion Journey. Therefore, I want to take this opportunity to invite none other than Tabitha Wamboi. Tabitha Wamboi works with the Kenya National Bureau of Statistics as an economist. She also has vast experience. She works in the Directorate of Macroeconomic Statistics, where financial inclusion sits. And therefore, I want to call upon Tabitha to take the floor and take us through the overview of FinAccess. Welcome.
Thank you. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. This morning, I want to take you through the FinAccess journey so far. Financial inclusion is a key pillar in developing a globally vibrant and competitive financial service sector. And an inclusive financial sector underpins the achievement of Vision 2030, including our fast-growing digital economy. Financial inclusion is also central to improving household welfare and achieving aspirations at the Sustainable Development Goals, including other global development objectives for the country. So the objectives of the FinAccess service is to provide nationally representative data to track progress towards financial inclusion. The other thing is to understand the drivers of financial behavior, that is the formal and informal, and to identify the challenges and opportunities for deepening financial inclusion. So given these three objectives of tracking progress, understanding the drivers, and identifying challenges, we are able to better inform policy and for business development for the private sector. FinAccess started in 2005 as a partnership between policymakers, development actors, and private sector to provide the evidence base that will guide market development over time. Since 2006, we have conducted 5 rounds of FinAccess, the last one being in 2019. During that time, since we started this service, the survey has borne witness to the transformation of Kenya's financial inclusion landscape and the increasing formalization supported by digital technology. At the same time, the survey is one of the few data sources which highlights the continued use of informal services parallel with formal services, indicating the richness of Kenyans' financial portfolios. So Kenyans have both formal and services and informal service options. Lastly, despite this progress, the survey highlights some persistent pockets of exclusion, which is of concern, especially given the growing importance of formal accounts for accessing goods and services. Along with the changing financial landscape, our thinking has also evolved. In the early days, we were more concerned with expanding access to financial services as a key element of household welfare and growth. But as the years have progressed, we have become increasingly interested in the usage patterns and consumer behavior and movement of services. More recently, we have become concerned with the quality of financial services and ensuring that consumers are protected. And currently, we have turned our attention not just to expanding financial access, but to question the relevance and impact of finance in improving household welfare and growth. And indeed, in the last survey, the 2019 survey, we were able to see that while formal inclusion continued to rise, the financial health of the individuals was going down. So today's FinAccess survey is increasingly looked to as a comprehensive source of data on financial inclusion. So the survey enables us to track our progress in relation to with our peer countries. And you can see that Kenya is way ahead in the region in terms of formal inclusion compared to our peers. The next thing, it gives us a landscape view across all providers, for both formal and informal providers, for both banks, to chamas, pension services, and to insurance. We try to bring in all financial services, to measure all financial services, their access, their usage, and the quality that is provided in the market. The survey also highlights the areas where we still need to grow. For instance, despite Kenya's global reputation for its digital financial services in the realm of daily transaction, cash is still king. Cash is still a major player in the financial sector. Many of you will stop at FinAccess showcase metrics such as how many Kenyans are formally included. But actually the data is incredibly rich, and we need to conduct a deep dive analysis to mine the data and extract the granular insights that will help us target policy and drive intervention. So I call upon us that we may access this data, which is available in the KNBS, FSD, and CBK website to do further analysis and also inform your product development. So FinAccess has much to tell us about key areas of the market like digital credit. For instance, the 2019 survey tells us that digital loans are the third most common type of loan in Kenya. And contrary to other formal offers that are also closely aligned with informal arrangements such as shopkeeper credit and lending across social networks in terms of their prevalence and size. So digital credit is almost to the same level as the informal borrowing from shopkeepers, from a neighbor, and from friends. Another study which has mined FinAccess to extract new insights is the FSD Kenya and SIGAP segmentation analysis published in 2020. These analyses give us incredibly rich and detailed metrics on key livelihood segments, highlighting new opportunities for financial providers to address their unmet needs. So in this analysis, we're able to pull out from the survey those people who own businesses, the dependents, and even the employed, and even what they do, if they are in the public sector or the private sector, the low-wage earners or high-wage earners, and providers can fashion their products for that. So lastly, FinAccess is a broad national survey, which gives a landscape view of the market. But if you want to understand particular areas of the market in more depth, the survey also offers some interesting possibilities. Beyond the main survey, we have begun to leverage the FinAccess sample to develop in-depth survey that we had, that is looking at the behavior of users of smartphones, and the survey is ongoing. In this study, a sub-sample of the FinAccess survey of 2019 was drawn, and they consented to being tracked on their phones, their transactions, and their digital behavior. The beauty of using FinAccess in this way is that subpopulations can be contextualized against the wider population, and in-depth issues explored in relation to the wider inclusion landscape. So we can be able to look at, for example, during the pre-COVID, what was the transaction like for those who were looking at during the COVID period, and even after when this pandemic has eased. I want to close by saying that KNBS has recently become increasingly involved as a partner in the FinAccess survey, and we see this as an important resource for Kenya. The survey speaks to an area of the economy that in which many of us are in the region. So Kenya is known as a country that is rich, and there's a lot of innovation towards this product. And we hope that through these collaborations, we can be able to build further. I want to stop here and say I thank you all for listening, and thank you.
Thank you so much, Tabitha. Indeed, that was a very good presentation on the overview of FinAccess, and I want to engage our communications team. We'll be posing a few questions just to assess whether people have been able to follow the presentation and probably respond to one or two questions. But as we do that, I will request Christine Haugard to be preparing to appear on stage. Christine Haugard will be making a presentation soon, but before we go there, I've seen you have questions appearing on your screen, and it's a very simple question which we want you to give us your feedback. And the question is, when was the first FinAccess launched? So when was the first FinAccess launched? So just click on the answer, and we'll be able to see the results shortly. Just a minute, we see the results after people participate in the poll. So these are questions that builds on the presentation we have just had. And in case you are joining us, we are streaming live on YouTube, and you can also be able to follow us on hashtag FinAccess on Twitter. Let's see how the polls look like. It's just a question to see the understanding, to seek the understanding of the overview of the FinAccess, and has just been presented by Tabitha Wamboi from the Kenya National Bureau of Statistics. So I can see the polls are still coming in. We have quite a good number of people who have said that the first FinAccess survey was launched in 2012, standing at around 10%. Those who feel it was started in 2005 are around 21%. We also have 67% giving 2006, and we have 1%, 2%, and I can see the numbers are still growing, and the numbers are still growing. So basically what we wanted to establish here is whether people understand when the journey of financial inclusion started in Kenya. And just to give an answer is that the correct answer is actually 2006. And this was driven by the need for data on financial inclusion. And this came up following the UN year of microfinance in 2005. And that is actually the correct answer. So a majority were able to get the correct answer. Thank you so much for your participation. Just in case you're joining us, we are moving to the second session, which now focuses on the data solution providers, people who have been able to leverage on the FinAccess data, either to come up with a product for the market, to grow their business, and even to do a lot of financial education and financial literacy on various segments. So next on stage is Christine Hugard, who will be joining us live from South Africa. She'll be looking at the opportunities that exist for policymakers and industry players, and this will be through a lens that looks at the financial needs of Kenyans and how this can be tapped or the development of an inclusive financial system. So Christine Hugard is a technical director at Senfree, and that is based in South Africa. And she has been working on financial inclusion for over 5 years. And over the past 5 years, she was part of Senfree and Finmark Trust, who were very instrumental in the development of the needs-based framework. So over to you, Christine Hugard.
Thank you, Mwangi, and good morning, everybody. I've got a bit of an unstable internet connection, so I'm going to switch off my video, but hopefully we've connected. So as Dr. Mwangi said, I'm just going to give you a bit of an overview today of one of the aspects that's for the first time being covered in FinAccess 2019, and that is the financial needs measurement framework. And I'm just going to give you a flavor from FinAccess about what the financial needs framework is and why it's relevant. Basically speaking, the financial needs framework is just a new or different perspective of looking at financial inclusion and tracking financial inclusion as a complement to the traditional ways of looking at what the financial inclusion progress is. So as you saw in Tabitha's presentation, the traditional way of looking at financial inclusion is by tracking the percentage of the adult population that has some kind of a formal financial service. And as you're all aware, there's been great strides made in Kenya, with now FinAccess 2019 recording 83% formal inclusion in Kenya. But what the financial needs framework argues is that by just looking at the percentage included, one might actually be missing important opportunities and imperatives. Now let's illustrate by looking at the market segmentation analysis that FSD Kenya did with CGAP and 71.4, whereas Tabitha explained, it segmented the Kenyan adult population into 6 different target market segments. So we'll be looking at 2 examples. The one is the urban small businesses, and the other is the local market farmers. Now, both of these represent sizable market opportunities if you look at it from a financial service provider point of view. There are 2.2 million urban small businesses, and they together earn a monthly income or turnover of 34 billion shillings, and 4.2 million local market farmers who have a combined monthly income of 33 billion shillings. Both of these segments are also extremely well included. For the urban small businesses, it's 96%, and I think that's largely on the back of mobile money. But also even for the local market farmers, we see 78% included, and that is very high compared to many other countries in Africa and elsewhere. Yet, what is very interesting to see is that they do not turn to the financial services that they have when it really matters. So we see by looking at the data that 70% of the formally included urban small business owners only operate in cash in their businesses. And likewise, for the farmers, the local market farmers, just 8% of those that are formally included would turn to that formal financial services that they have when they struggle to meet their expenses. Why is that? Why, if they have formal financial services, do they not use them? So the financial needs framework is then just a different way, a different starting point for looking at financial inclusion that starts by not asking who is included and why do they have the financial services that they have, but rather starts by asking what are the underlying financial needs that people have, and then asking how do they meet those needs. So it sees financial inclusion as a means to an end, not the end in itself. And that end that they want to achieve is the underlying financial need. Now, we define 4 universal financial needs, and you'll really find these needs across any country. And those are these 4 as indicated on the slide. First is the need to transfer value. Everybody has a need to make and receive payments to live their daily financial lives. Now, each need is made up of discrete, what we call use cases. So the specific thing for which you would want to use a financial service. Now, transfer of value, it can be the need to buy groceries. It can be the need to pay your monthly rent. It can be the need to pay school fees. So each of those is a use case. And then the need is just a combination of different use cases that categorize into that need bucket. The second need would be what we call liquidity. Just the need to meet your expenses on an ongoing basis, to balance your income and your expenses. Thirdly is the need, what we call resilience. Everybody experience some kind of an unexpected shock at some stage. So there's the need to meet those large expenses that would then result from the shocks or other unpredictable events, and to cope with that, and that is the resilience need. And then in the 4th instance, there's the need to meet goals. So everybody, no matter how poor you are, you aspire to some goals in life, and you have a need to accumulate larger sums of money that can help you achieve the objectives that you cannot just fund from your regular income. Now, people use a basket of different financial services and strategies to meet each of these needs, and we call these financial devices. We intentionally speak about financial device rather than a financial service because the plan or strategy, what you do to meet your need, can be broader than just turning to a financial service. You might just be keeping some money under the mattress at home. You might be selling off some livestock. You might be working more or less, or you might turn to your family and friends in the community for assistance. So all of these are financial devices that you can use to meet a need. And we classify these as either being social devices, so community support or assistance or loans or savings, or they can be personal devices, the cash that you have in your back pocket, or the livestock that you sell, or they can also be formal and informal financial services. And of course, the financial devices can also be classified, so be it credit, savings, insurance, or payments. Now let's look at the insights from FinAccess 2019 on how Kenyans, or what needs Kenyans express and how they meet those needs. Now, as we would expect, everybody has a transfer of value need. Everybody needs to make transactions to live their daily financial lives. The main use cases that we see for transfer of value in the FinAccess is firstly daily expenses, as would be expected, then your more lumpy monthly expenses, and then thirdly, it was school fees. And that was followed by transferring money, so remittances, money sent and received. In terms of trouble meeting daily needs, so the liquidity need, we see that 62%, so almost 2 out of every 3 Kenyans, say that they regularly experience the situation where it's not so easy to balance the income and the expenses. So we call that liquidity distress, and that triggers a need for a financial service to help smooth things over. Then we see that 59% of Kenyan adults express that they are investing in a goal. So they are actively planning towards meeting a goal. The most important use cases coming out there, firstly, is starting or expanding a business, so the entrepreneurial spirit. Secondly, very important, is providing for the education of your children, maybe also for yourself. And then thirdly, people aspire to buy a house. So all of that triggers some need to use a financial device. Then also, if we just look at risks experienced in the past year, we see that 1/3 of Kenyan adults actually experienced a shock that triggered some need to cope by using a financial device. The first use case, most often experienced use case, is sickness and accident and injury, but also losses due to natural disasters, drought being front of mind. And then thirdly, also not surprisingly, the death of the family member. What is then very interesting is to look at, okay, if these are the needs and the use cases that people experience, how do they actually meet those needs? Which devices do they use? And here we look at what their main or first devices that they turn to meet the needs. On this graph, or on these donut charts, what I would like to point you towards is the gray blocks. So the gray circle, the inner circle, represents those percentage of Kenyans who experience each of these 3 goals that turn to a formal device to meet that goal. And that can be formal savings or borrowings or insurance. The green portion represents informal. So informal saving, which would include chamas, it would include assistance from family and friends, and informal borrowing. And then the blue portion represents those who work more or cut expenditure or sold assets, so sort of the non-financial devices. Now, what is interesting to note here is that in each of the 3 needs indicated here, the gray part is really the minority. So when people have trouble meeting their daily needs, only 13% would turn to a formal financial service. The rest, even though they're well included, would look elsewhere. When they want to invest in a goal, it increases to 31%, so about almost 1/3 of adults would turn to a formal financial service to help them invest in a goal. But still, 2 out of every 3 would not. And when it comes to managing shocks, it's even lower still, at about 1 out of every 4 that would turn to a formal financial service. It's also possible to break it down and analyze by specific use cases. So the previous slide gave you an indication of the overall use of financial devices by need, but that often doesn't tell you that much, and it's better to dig a little bit deeper into how people fulfill specific use cases. Here we look at transfer of value as an example of the use case breakdown, and this picks up on what Tabitha also already mentioned in the previous presentation, that cash is still king. So here we see the main use cases for transfer of value. Firstly, pay daily expenses, then pay monthly bills, pay school fees. For each of these, yes? For each of these, we see that the majority of people use cash. So the green bar denotes the percentage that prefer to use cash to meet these specific transfer of value use cases. When you start to send and receive money, when distance becomes an issue, then we see that the proportion reduces. But for the most part, as Tabitha also said, cash is still king. right, so back to the bigger picture. I just gave you a bit of an overview or a flavor of what FinAccess tells you about the needs that that Kenyan adults experience and how they meet these needs. But what are the implications of this at a policy level, and what does the needs framework tell us about the opportunities for market players? Now, picking up again from the high-level findings of FinAccess, at the policy level, we see that there's rising financial inclusion in Kenya, which is really a good thing. But then at the same time, FinAccess also shows us that there's falling financial health. And what is driving this discrepancy? Obviously, financial health is affected by not just financial access and financial usage. Your income and your socioeconomic circumstances also play a large role. But what the financial needs framework says is that if financial services could do a better job to better meet people's financial needs and understand those financial needs, it could help bridge this gap to improve people's capabilities and contribute to better financial health. So for financial service providers, the financial needs-based framework then gives us some insights on where the opportunities lies for financial providers to tap into these needs and grow their markets, and also what the imperatives are for better competing with those informal and social alternatives. FinAccess provides a real richness and depth of detail on specific use cases, on all the different financial needs. What I've given you is very much the high level overview, but it's possible to dig so much deeper to understand for specific target market segments, for women versus men, for rural versus urban, for specific geographies, for specific income categories. What are the needs? What are the use cases that people express? And where do they turn to meet those needs? So I would really encourage financial service providers and policymakers to use the full depth and richness of the Financial Access Survey to explore this dimension and angle on financial inclusion. Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you very much, Christine Haggard, for the wonderful presentation. We are able to see that there are quite enough opportunities for players in the industry, and especially picking from the slide on the people who have trouble meeting liquidity needs, which stood at around 62%. That tells us that there is indeed a very huge opportunity for financial service providers. And we've also been able to see that even in terms of people who have experienced shocks in the past, which stood at around 36%, and we've also seen that about 59% also has been featured in terms of those people who are investing in future goals. So these sort of provide financial service providers with opportunities to target those specific market segments, probably with solutions. Thank you very much. So before we move to the next session, where we'll be hearing about now the real application of data in terms of the design of health products to inform the agenda for the government. Allow me to request you to respond to a question that will be featuring on your screen in a very short while. And the question that we'll be posting this time round is to be able to understand whether this is the first time that you're interacting with the FinAccess survey. So the question reads, did you know about the FinAccess surveys before today? So the question again reads, did you know about the FinAccess surveys before today? So we take 30 seconds and respond to that particular question. And for those who are joining us now, just to inform you that we are live on YouTube. We're also live on FSD Kenya YouTube channel, so you could be able to stream again from there. And in case you are on Twitter, you can also follow us on hashtag FinAccess. So you can stream live again from FSD Kenya YouTube channel, as well as the YouTube. And also for those on Twitter, you are also able to follow us on Twitter on hashtag FinAccess. So we'll keep tweeting and retweeting this event, and so that we can be able to reach as many people as possible. So that's the question again. Maybe we can take 10 more seconds and see whether it's actually the first time that people are interacting with the FinAccess surveys. There goes the answers. Again, we've seen that 80% knew about the FinAccess survey before this event. 20% only had no idea about the FinAccess, or probably had not interacted with FinAccess surveys prior. So thank you very much. We move to the next presentation. As I mentioned, we try to make sure that we are able to cover all segments, all population segments, and also all markets. And in this case, just to be able to contribute to the agenda for the government, where health falls, we have invited Tim Mukata, who will be shedding some light on how we can be able to leverage on FinAccess data to come up with health products that can be used to address the plight of the poor. Tim Mukata is a digital finance and growth practitioner with over 20 years experience, and that spans in several countries in Africa. And of importance is that he is very passionate about transforming financial services through technology. So over to you, Tim Mukata.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Mwangi. Thank you very much for those who made it for this conference. And I appreciate that you had said 50 years of experience. I guess I can take the claim of 50 years collectively. Now, allow me to introduce to you John. You can see him on the screen. John is a market trader, and he has a young family. He has no insurance, and whenever he experiences a health incident, he really struggles to deal with it. One other thing about John is that he finds it very, very hard to ask for help from his friends and family. Now, there are so many Kenyans who just fit the profile, like John. Now, let's move away from John for a second and back to him. So I'm speaking more directly to people who develop solutions. So imagine a solution that is self-replicating, it can sell itself. When users pick it, they don't want to drop it. It's so compelling that they have to tell other people about it. It's easy to share. And best of all, it can be developed on a low budget. Can that solution exist? So the examples I've given you on the screen are just some of the features, solutions that have most of these features. And the thing that is common about them is that they are both persuasive and pervasive by design. Now, if you were to have such a solution, you'd probably have to develop it along a number. Apologies. Okay, I can continue. So if you're to create a user experience, you'd probably have to go through a number of layers. Of course, there's a core solution, whatever the solution is addressing. And then what you can see on the screen are three other layers that tap into the social fabrics of the users, how the users think, that is the behavioral. And then you can even go a step further into the brain science. All that can be built upon a bedrock of data and evidence. Now, going back to John, if you were to use those layers and still try to address the particular problem of John of not being able to ask for help because he finds it very hard, what you're seeing on the screen is just an example of seeking remittances from friends and family. At the top, you have the nudge. Somewhere you can see the numbers. That is social proof. That is evidence of other people who have asked for help and received. Around the middle is the testimonials. And these are stories of people who have successfully managed to ask for help. And then it makes use of the technique known as storytelling, which is very effective because it can be crafted in such a way that it triggers some movements in the brain, in particular talking about hormones, that would make the recipient respond favorably to that message. And at the very bottom, you'd have what you call the call to action, which prompts and urges the person to go ahead to ask for help or to tell a friend. Now, such a solution would most effectively be designed, developed, and scaled, and on a shoestring using a methodology which is fairly new, and it's a shift from the traditional ways of doing business, generally referred to as growth or product-led growth. Now, the journey for such a solution would start with data. And for today, being a FinAccess conference, I will focus the story on how data and FinAccess data has been used by one of the players, and it's still ongoing, to develop a market solution similar to what the example I've just given you. Now, the biggest value that I derive from FinAccess is that it allows for deep segmentation and analysis of data. We've already seen quite a few examples from Christine. Now, the deep dives can be applied in many sectors, and for today, we will focus on the healthcare sector. Now, when we were working on the FinAccess data in this journey, we used what is generally referred as a DIKW framework, which is a framework of transforming data into information, into knowledge, and then using that knowledge to develop solutions, which is generally referred to as wisdom. So FinAccess generally fits across data and information. We used secondary data, and from the two, managed to draw insights and make interpretations. We did a qualitative survey and a human-centered design process, which is currently ongoing to develop the market solutions. So most value is derived from FinAccess when it is part of a collective. So it is very much like an instrument and a player in an orchestra. The story I'm talking to you about is a FinAccess study, which was looking at raw data of FinAccess and taking it through a transformation into a product concept for a mobile health solution. And I'll just read the quotation from FinAccess Foundation based on the experience with FinAccess. The vast and diverse set of FSD's financial household data, in combination with the expert analytical support, has been invaluable in our journey of the development of a digital health credit product. Ultimately, the goal is to turn data into information and information into insights. And without data and assistance of FSD, we would not have been able to do so. The problem that they were keen to address was that a lot of Kenyans are not able to pay for their medical services at the time of need. And this is even before COVID. Now, this was the project team, and the story I'm sharing with you very briefly is for phase 1. The project is still ongoing. I was playing a role as an independent consultant. Then we had the FinAccess Foundation team and the FSD Kenya team. Along with that, we had a field of researchers. So what did we manage to do? So the first thing we did was to identify 15 segments within the Kenyan population, and this was from the FinAccess data. And the segments cut across different attributes, age group, location, income level, and so forth. We further did a deep dive on the relevant financial and health variables with a specific focus on health. That is, for example, the people who went without medicine and how much they spent on healthcare or medical care. That was the data which we managed to look into and transform into information, and information with other sources, secondary sources, as I mentioned. And then we also created personas out of the segments. So these are the 5 personas that we felt were of interest for us. And then some of the information that we managed to draw from the data, for example, the health shocks that people experienced over the 1 year, generally how much on average they spend, the perception or the prioritization of health in the household budget, and you can see it comes at number 4. The people who went without treatment that they needed, and you can see it's a large number of people who actually go without treatment. And then for those who managed to go for treatment, how they addressed the payment. And this again, you can see the orange is borrowing informally. So borrowing and borrowing from informal sources is the main instrument that a lot of Kenyan households use when they're dealing with healthcare. So coming out of that information, we managed to transform it and create knowledge, and I'll just share some of the knowledge because it was quite a lot. So we saw the men's reluctance to tap into their social networks. You can identify with John, and one of the people that was surveyed in the qualitative survey had that to say, which speaks volumes about how hard they find borrowing from their friends. But the interesting thing is that when it is a major health shock, that reluctance seems to drift away, and the men, just like the women, largely fall back to their social networks. We all know that insurance is a hard sell in this market. And the interesting thing to share is there's a lot of superstition and beliefs around purposely saving for insurance. Many people believe that it is when you do that, that you're actually attracting the misfortune. Then we have other things that block people from taking up insurance, and it ranges from competing financial needs within the household, a lack of proper understanding of the product, and I've mentioned religious and superstitious influences as well. Just to dive a bit deeper in the competing financial needs within the household, given the choice between food and going for medicine, many times I think it's a no-brainer that food will always take a higher priority. And this is simply because of the meager financial resources within the family. Now, chamas are quite a prominent feature in the social fabric of Kenyans. Men and women look at chamas differently. Women are more organized within chamas than men are. And I think the biggest issue is about the secrecy of money. So one of the respondents said, with money, there's no secret. And a lot of men don't like that. So if you're going to try and tap into a social network, if you're addressing men, then you'll need to go the extra mile and do some nudging. We also saw that the church, besides being a spiritual nourishment center, also provides assistance to its members you can say, social assistance. And it's also a place for social mobilization and support. And then lastly, remember most of the people who address the medical needs borrowed informally. So credit is also a very strong feature in providing a solution to a lot of Kenyans. And they would borrow from different sources. So with all that, if you are to develop a solution, put it all together to have the big picture, and then go ahead and try and see how you can address those particular needs of Kenyans. So we thank FinAccess because they're currently doing exactly that. The example I've given you of John is hypothetical, and I'm sure in not so long from now, FinAccess will come with a very good and competitive product that targets these needs. And with that, I think I've come to the end of my presentation.
Thank you very much indeed, Team Mukata, for the great presentation, and especially being able to shed light on how we can develop solutions using the FinAccess data, and particularly health products. And actually, as I was following your presentation, reminded of an outcome that we had on the people who save in secret hiding places. And in fact, you can be able to see that in our report, in our FinAccess report, which was published in 2019. In the interest of time, allow me to invite on stage Jackie Mwaniki. Jackie Mwaniki will be demonstrating to us how the FinAccess data can also be used and applied in supporting initiatives in different sectors, and particularly Frame brings a lot of a world of experience in terms of geospatial data analysis. So she'll be able to give us insights on how we can be able to apply this and against the other data sets. Over to you, Jackie.
Good morning, this is Jackie. I'm joining you from Frame, and I'm pleased to be part of the team that is presenting on the use of FinAccess data, and I'll be looking at different areas in which we apply this data. So for interest of saving bundles, I'll be turning off my video. So a little bit about Frame. What we do is we look at publicly available data sets. The reason why we do this is we're trying to find all granular informative surveys that have been done at household surveys, and combining this with satellite imagery to understand where these communities that have been surveyed are, and combining this with some of the supply side data, which is data that coming in from the banks, coming in from the regulators, coming in from the consumer companies that we're working with. Now, FinAccess has been very helpful in terms of understanding the landscape of financial inclusion in Kenya. And what is highlighted in red going forward is showing where we have included FinAccess surveys in our analytics. So what we do is we acquire this data, we disaggregate it, looking at it at micro level, and then just partially enabling it to allow us to create maps that gives insights on the population using machine learning and some of the proprietary algorithms that we have developed. And then the third thing, the final thing that we do is being able to turn this data into analytics and insights that lead directly into decision making. So I'll be looking at different use cases, and these are the three topics that I've picked for today's discussion. So the first one will be on commercial, the second one is renewable energy, and the third one is a health use case. So when you're thinking from a commercial perspective, what you want to understand is who's your target consumer, what do they look like from a financial inclusion perspective, but also some of the decision-making indicators that play into why they are a target consumer for you. So financial inclusion is one. We look at literacy, we look at technology. Do they use mobile platforms? Do they use formal banking? And then thinking about the size of the household that they come from. Are they headed by men or women? And we're able to build a very robust consumer profile. So in this example in front of you, we're thinking of a retail outlet. Think of a restaurant. And to be very specific, we have used this type of consumer profiling for Java House. So Java House has been interested in finding who's the primary customer for Java House meal, and then being able to identify how many of them exist. Tell us a little bit about their spending. Tell us a little bit about how much they spend on rent, on eating out. But most importantly, are they financially included? How do we tap into them? Do they use Visa? So can we think about partnerships with merchants, or do they use mobile money? So can we think about how to allow them to use FinAccess platforms? So we're looking at primary customers, which drive the primary locations. And then we're also adding a little bit of who else can spend money at Java, and what do they look like from a financial perspective. For Nairobi, and I think most of you have probably had a cup of tea or walked outside at Java, this data that we have built out as consumer profiles allows us to pinpoint where these people who look like Java customers or could be Java customers are located. Once again, you can see financial inclusion is a very key factor, in addition to literacy and media consumption. And then when we're looking at ABC consumers, these are usually the top of the pyramid, or what we call the wealthier social economic class. Financial inclusion also plays a part, because we want to know, how do we tap into high net worth customers, and where are they located, and how can we think about an ecosystem to keep them within like a retail system, for example, like for Java. Again, when you're thinking about site selection, being able to drill down to existing locations and where Java House or any other retail outlet can be based, we translate these consumer profiles into a location. And you could think about this from an ATM perspective. Do you need a new ATM based on who's using ATMs, or do you need a new mobile money agent, depending on what the target consumer you're thinking about is financially included and how easy to use them. Another example that we apply our data and analytics into is thinking about the size of a market. In this use case, we were working with a development agency, and we were helping them understand financial inclusion landscape in Kenya, and then thinking about consumer credit opportunities for investment. So in this play, they wanted to know, where can we find banks with networks in these top locations that are showing opportunities for consumer credit? So which banks are located in Eldoret, in Nairobi, Mombasa, Nakuru? But outside of this top counties or top towns that we're thinking about, when we map this data, we start to see that there's people outside of these top locations who look like the people in Nairobi. And this becomes very interesting when you're thinking about investment and early adopters for some of your businesses. Another use case that we have seen that is of interest to our client base is thinking about what is the best market to get into across Africa? Or if we're thinking about East Africa, which is the most robust market to get into now? And what is the kind of platform do I get into? Do I get into brick and mortar branches for banks, or do I think about digital platforms? So one of the things that we have done at Frame is being able to build very bespoke consumer profiles. And one of the things we look at is financial inclusion and the type of inclusion. And then we do test for things like mobile money awareness. Which platform do they use for mobile money mostly? And how much are they transacting on mobile money? And this is built into consumer segments. So for example, if there was a client that wanted to expand into the wider Africa, we would be able to help them think about market sizing from this perspective. When it comes to energy, one of the challenges that is coming out clearly when you're thinking about clean energy is also the use of clean cook fuels. And one of the challenges that some of our customers would like addressed are, if I am innovating for a product that is around using better fuels, for example, EcoGeco or any other LPG type of gas cylinder, I want to know what is my target consumer, but also what type of credit, what type of structuring payment options can I provide for this particular subsegment? If you can remember, a lot of the households that tend to use less than ideal cooking fuels are usually the bottom of the pyramid. So how do you understand the bottom of a pyramid target group from thinking about financial inclusion, and what type of credit structures do you build out for them. And lastly, the health example that I'll be showing today is in light of the recent pandemic. One of the shocks that I think most people experience was where can I find data that helps me understand the population right now and help me think about a preparedness or a response plan. So one of the things that the government tried to put together in record time was coming up with a national action plan, and they needed data that was readily available. So one of the insights that we needed to prepare a socioeconomic vulnerability indices is thinking about financial inclusion. How many people were susceptible to shocks from an economic perspective? People who lost jobs, people who probably could not be able to tap into technology as they used to before because of some of the economic shocks. So one of the things that we looked into is financial inclusion, and that's where we looked at the FinAccess data, going backwards, but also thinking about a little bit of prediction. So this is a shock that means people will lose jobs, the economy is going to shrink. What does that mean for the next 1 year in terms of socioeconomic vulnerability? So when we think about the universe of customers that we work with, we can summarize the opportunities for use of FinAccess data in these 4 pillars. So the first one is the ones that I just showed you, consumer segmentation and market sizing. But also in addition to this, by looking at this data, we can be able to think about what are the areas for innovation that are coming up. Are people using less of brick and mortar branches? Are they using more mobile technology? Do you deploy more resources in development of the USSD platform, or you're thinking about building apps? What is there in terms of agribusiness or fintech that could be an area of expansion for you? And then generally from a global development perspective is looking at community needs and assessment for advisory when it comes to resilience and livelihood support, like in light of the current pandemic, but also going forward, what kind of impact do you want to make and how can financial inclusion be one of the areas that you're looking into? And then looking at the programs that are rolling out, baseline data, monitoring, and evaluation is one of the things that we see as a request from some of our clients. And just in general, this slide here shows a little bit of who we work with. So from the global development side, we're working with development agencies like the World Bank, the African Development Bank, the IFC, the USAID. We're working with private equity partners. So we are working with TPG. We worked with a Braz group, which unfortunately now is not in market, but we have worked with private equity companies, working with their portfolio companies like Java House, and thinking about clean energy. We're thinking about working with the Shell Foundation, thinking about pay-go models, which primarily run on like financial inclusion on the mobile platform. We're thinking about how to include them as well. And then healthcare, consumer services, all tap into FinAccess data. Thank you, and I will end my presentation there.
Thank you so much, Jackie. That presentation comes at a time when we have all been grappling with the COVID-19 pandemic. And one of the things that we've been able to learn from the presentation is that there is a way we can use the FinAccess survey data in order to reach to those people who are susceptible to shocks. And one other thing that came out from the presentation is the strength of the FinAccess data in terms of informing on financial inclusion status, and even in terms of the location of high network customers. And for your information, the FinAccess dataset is able to collect both the longitudes and the latitudes. That means that if you want to do analysis, that kind of analysis, you can actually be able to leverage on the longitudes and the latitudes to be able to locate potential customers. Ladies and gentlemen, we are coming closer and closer to the end of the webinar. And just in case you are joining us now, we are streaming live on YouTube and also on FSD Kenya YouTube channel. And in case you're on Twitter, you can follow us on hashtag FinAccess. I've seen we have quite a number of questions coming in the Q&A section, and we'll be able to deal with them shortly after the presentations are done. So allow me to invite on stage Wanjiro Kiriro, who will be able to shed some light on how we can be able to provide or support organizations to be able to make FinAccess data more useful. Over to you, Wanjiro Kiroro.
Thank you very much, Mwangi, and good morning, good afternoon, everyone. I'll just mute my video for the sake of bandwidth. Okay, oops, sorry. Okay, so Telma, who is Telma? Telma is a global company, global software company. We have over 25,000 users worldwide, and we've loaded numerous data sets. As you can see, over 5,500 data sets around the world. Our clients range from government to financial services, media owners. So a variety of industries use our media, our Telma software platforms to interrogate their data. A key thing about Telma is all our software and data is based on the cloud, which means you can access our software from wherever you are. You can access our software on the go, which makes it very, very versatile and easy for you as you're doing your day-to-day job. In terms of data, we are 100% independent. We are not affiliated to any research agency, anybody. So we can load data across industries, from big data to proprietary data and to open source data such as FinAccess, which we have loaded onto our software successfully. How does it work? As I said, Telma does not do research. So what happens is that a research provider, data provider such as FinAccess, allows us to load the data onto our platforms. And then Telma will package and make it user-friendly. We'll also make sure that we validate and ensure that our output matches the input from the data provider. Then finally, this data on our platform goes to the client base. So for example, for FinAccess, because it's open source, anyone who has subscribed to Telma software can get FinAccess data. If it's proprietary and the data belongs to you, then only you will get your data, and anyone else, you give us permission to share your data and has the platform. So today I want to take you through one of our programs, which is called Survey Time. And this program allows you to do analysis from very simple cross tabulations all the way to more complex analysis, like factor analysis, cluster analysis. And I'll show you examples of each. And it's a very, very easy to use program. It's a drag and drop user interface. So you basically will just drag some variable to the column, drag another variable to the row, and you hit a button and you have your table. If you're happy with the data output, hit another button and you have your chart. So very, very easy to use. Even if you're not technical, you can learn how to use this software and be able to interrogate the FinAccess data. You'll also be able to track data over time. So be it FinAccess over the years, also your own data, if you do trackers, if you do monitoring over time, you can load that and be able to do trend analysis. Autographics is a very good visualization add-on, and this allows you to do, as you can see, fancy charts, interactive charts to bring life to your presentations and to make it easier for you to sell. This is an example of output from FinAccess that we've ran on Survey Time. A very, very simple analysis. We interrogated people who exclusively use bank accounts. And then we did a cross tab by what banks do they use. So you can see by putting this on a chart, it's very easy to see the extent to which one bank is bigger than the other in terms of having people who exclusively use commercial banks. And then you can do the second level of analysis and find out people who only use bank accounts, use commercial banks, sorry, and who are equity bank account holders. Who are they? And you can be able to drill down further and understand that sector. Then I picked another example in terms of what are the most important goals to people who exclusively use, what are the most important goals in life for people who only use bank accounts. And you can see putting food on the table, health, education are the three most important criteria. So this can inform in terms of product development, or you as a financial institution, financial services provider, being able to help these people achieve and meet the most important goals in their life. Another example I did, just to illustrate the power of survey time, is again from FinAccess data, people with joint accounts with banks and people with only own account with bank. How many are they? What is the extent of penetration of these two type of customers? And this illustrates that you can see from the bubble, the bigger bubble is that Equity Bank has highest penetration of people in both. And if you go down the table or down the chart, you begin to see how different banks behave. So in the smaller banks, you find more people have own account compared to joint accounts. So this informs how that sector plays in that area and allows you to develop products, develop communication so that you can achieve your objectives in that sense. Another example we took from the latest FinAccess data is people who've moved home in the past 3 years. Why did they move? And the biggest reason why people moved at 18.4% is to a cheaper house. But this is followed by people who relocated for temporary work and permanent work. And if you combine those two groups, it's about a third of those who moved in the past 3 years. So that tells you that there could be a need, or there is an opportunity because moving costs. How can I alleviate the pain of moving for this group of people by providing financial services? By the next survey, we'll be able to see and compare the reasons why people are moving in this season of COVID. We want to know who has moved to another region because of COVID, who is sharing a house because of COVID, who has had to downgrade, and so on and so forth. And then you'll be able to analyze this further by to which counties have they moved to, from which counties did they move from, and that will inform decision-making even at county level in terms of who is coming into your county, who is leaving your county, and why. Finally, I want to just do an example from a more complex analysis, which is a factor analysis. And we want to do a factor analysis by products and services consumed, currently consumed. So we'll start with a list of 46 variables, and we want to reduce this into a number of factors, into a number of groups that will make it easier for us to understand the product and service market as per the FinAccess data. So I'll just, first step is to do a cross tab, put my products and services in my rows and do a cross tabulation to create a table. As I said, there are about 46 variables. I'll then export this to the factor analysis module within survey time. Without going into anything technical, it advises me what parameters to use for factor analysis. And again, if you're not very familiar with this complex analytics, we will be there to train you on how to do it. And then the software says that there are 5 groups, 5 factors, and I've exported this to Excel so that it's easier for us to read. So if you look at factor 1, which is group 1, you find that what they have in common is mobile money. So that's a mobile money group of people. Then if you look at group 2, which is factor 2, you find these are people who are using SACCOs, NHIF, NSSF, and do also use some banking products, the most basic banking products. They'll have an ATM and they'll have an account with no checkbook. Then if you go to factor 3, which is group 3, you'll find, this is where you find people who are using insurance products. You'll also find people who are using securities products, cryptocurrency. So a very different group of people from the first 2. And then you can, as I said, do a further analysis by exporting this and drilling down. Group 4 is about saving in a chama, borrowing from a chama, borrowing from a person who I sell to, my harvest, so cereals board, KTDA. So that's a specific group of people who are behaving in the same way. And then finally, I have a group of people who are into microfinance, either borrowing or saving with a microfinance. So the software has actually given us 5 groups to work with based on product and services. And you can create your own criteria for sending to factor analysis as you use the software. And then finally, you can export this to back to the cross tab and say, I want to now look at group 5 and I want to find out more about them. I can drill further down. So depending on your sector, you can do your own analysis of the different variables, huge number of variables in FinAccess data, and come up with groupings that you can then be able to interrogate further. Finally, in terms of the products that Telma is providing, we think that there will be great value for you as an end user if you can be able to integrate your data with FinAccess data and integrate the two to get a richer data set. And what would happen is that Telma data science team would do that for you. They'd want to link the 2 studies by looking at what questions and demographics do the 2 studies have in common. So if you have the hub survey being FinAccess and the donor survey being, say, a bank or any other financial services provider, they'd look at the 2 and say, what areas do they have in common that we can use to integrate? So for example, if your study looks at bank account holders, we know that in FinAccess data, there's access to financial services, and within that there will be bank account holders. So those are the linkage variables that the data science team would use to be able to integrate the 2 data sets, as well as any other demographics that are there. And it's very important going forward, if you want to, in future, integrate with FinAccess, work with the FinAccess FSD team and Telma team to make sure that your surveys going forward are able to integrate with FinAccess to make it a seamless integration. And with that, I wrap up. Telma is support and training. We're available to train our clients anytime through virtually through AnyDesk TeamViewer, in-person training, online training, and so on and so forth. We also, training is free if you subscribe to this software. So we'd loan the FinAccess data, and then we'd train you on how to use FinAccess data on our platform, from the most complex analysis all the way to advanced analytics, and we'd walk that journey with you. So finally, I'd like to say any sector can benefit from analyzing FinAccess data on our platform, and you'll be able to do in-depth analysis, as I've said, visualization, and so on and so forth. The last chart just tells you Telma contacts, and you'll be able to see this when you get the presentation. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much indeed, Wanjiru, for the wonderful presentation there, and particularly it's very interesting to see that about our approximately 18% of the population were able to move houses. And I think it will be interesting since we have some questions which will be discussed in the next session about the questions that we'll be asking on the COVID-19. It will be interesting to see how many people have moved houses because of COVID-19 pandemic. In the interest of time, I will request our communication team to project one question which we may want you to respond to. This brings us to the end of the first section on the practical application of FinAccess. And what we've been able to understand is that you can actually leverage on FinAccess data to be able to grow your business. And just in case you have joined us now, we are streaming live on YouTube and FSD Kenya YouTube channel. We also, you can also be able to follow us on Twitter, hashtag FinAccess. There are the questions projected, and this is a question sort of to wrap up that section, session on the practical application of FinAccess survey data. And the question reads, which of the following sessions did you find most interesting or applicable to your area of work stroke discipline? So again, which of the following sessions did you find most interesting or applicable to your area of work stroke discipline? So we can take about 30 seconds to respond, then we see how the results will be like. Thanks, ladies and gentlemen. Just to seek your indulgence, from my watch, I can see it's 4 minutes past 12. We should be winding up in a few. But before we do that, I want to take this opportunity to invite the next presenter, who now sort of give us an overview of what the whole process in terms of the implementation of the FinAccess survey is. And before I do that, just looking at the results there, we are able to see that in terms of the sessions, we can see how they scored. 1 on the overall FinAccess presentations, we have about 19%. We have a tie between the financial needs framework and also the financial analysis and insights tying at 25%. And keep voting. So thank you, ladies and gentlemen. The purpose of, again, meeting for this live webinar is to be able to take you through the journey of FinAccess. And now we want to also introduce you and give you sort of a sense of how the next survey will be implemented. And coming on stage is none other than Daniel Talam, who will be taking us through these very important slides so that he can be able to advise us on the partnership arrangements and how we relate with our partners, issues touching on the sampling methodology, the questionnaire design, and the funding structures. So over to you, Daniel Talam.
Thank you and welcome all. Thank you and welcome all. And mine will be an easy thing because most of the discussions have been done, and I think justification of why the FinAccess data is useful and vital for all of us has been quite demonstrated by the various presenters. Now, I want us to quickly run through why this FinAccess needs to be sustained and on a continuous basis and improve even in terms of the turnaround. The FinAccess started, as earlier presenters has made, that started in 2005 during the International Year of Microcredit, the United Nations Year of International Microcredit celebration, when the stakeholders met and decided that none of us knew the level or the magnitude of financial inclusion in Kenya. And so that was a part of the FinAccess surveys. Now, there are various surveys which is done across the world. There's the FinScope studies, which is mainly done by the FinMark Trust of South Africa, and it's done across various countries. And that is the part of the FSD brand, FSD Africa, FSD Tanzania, FSD Kenya. And I think I'm privileged to have been part of this process since 2005. And I think it humbles some of us to have seen how this survey has grown over time. Now, in 2005, we established the FinAccess partnership, which was basically a public-private partnership to champion the FinAccess surveys. The FinAccess is just like FinScope, but this is a brand that is unique to the Kenyan market and the Kenyan situations. And we really wanted to have something that we can play around without much to minimize the coordination, and we can domesticate to suit our own needs. It's really driven by the 3 partners, the CPK, FSD Kenya, and KNBS. All the decision making is done by the CEOs with involvement of the private sector partners that have supported us in the past surveys. The day-to-day management of the surveys and the coordination is done by a FinAccess management team hosted at the central bank, comprising of senior officials, mainly the Director of Research at the Central Bank, the Director of Research at FSD Kenya, and KNBS, the Director of Macroeconomic Statistics. So those are the people who run and manage the FinAccess survey, with a backup team mainly comprising of the FinAccess Secretariat, which is housed in the research department. It's conducted every 2 to 3 years, depending on circumstances that we experience at any moment. The next slide. Now, there's a sampling procedure that we use, and it's mainly guided by KNBS. And this sampling process is designed to give us a representative sample of the entire population. So at this stage, I want to invite Mr. James Nganga, a manager in sampling at KNBS, to talk to this issue of the sampling methodology. James Mwangi, karibu.
Thank you, Mr. Talam, and good afternoon, everyone. I will take a few minutes to take you through the sampling methodology that we are going to use for the next FinAccess, which is going to be conducted in 2021. Now, the FinAccess that is going to be undertaken next year is designed to provide estimates at national and county, and also at rural and urban levels. This is informed, as you have seen earlier on, what we were doing is that we were using the previous provinces or the former provinces that used to exist. But after the new constitution came into being in 2010, the provinces no longer exist, although in 2019, the last one, we used the provinces where we divided some provinces into regions, and we ended up having 13 regions. And that's where we collected data from in 2019, the previous FinAccess. Now, we have felt that there is need, because there has been demand for data, an increased demand for data at county level, because as all of you know, is that we have county governments, and they are also charged with the responsibility of ensuring that they come up with policies that are geared towards ensuring that the people and those counties are well, the policies within there are able to ensure that there's growth within those counties. And the well-being of those residents of the counties is well taken care of. And in this case, there has been a lot of demand for this data at county level. And thus, this informed the change from those regions to the county level data. Now, the survey is going to be population-based. In this case, it targets individuals aged 16 years and above. And we are going to have a sample size of 25,245 households. Now, the survey is going to adopt a stratified multi-stage cluster sampling, where we are going to use, first of all, to sample the clusters, and thereafter we are going to sample households within those clusters. And a cluster in this case is like a village, because we know individuals live in households, and then households are located in villages or in urban centers, what we call as estates. So in this case, we shall sample a village or a cluster. And then after we sample a cluster, within that cluster, we sample households. Then within a household, in case there are more than one, there's more than one individual in that household, we are going to sample one of them that is above 16 years. And that is the person that we shall ask questions relating to FinAccess. Now, one thing that I should also mention is that, as you'll see as we proceed, there are issues, or the questionnaire has some additions relating to COVID-19, and the sample size that is going to be, the sample size that we're talking about, the 25,245, is enough to provide estimates that relate to COVID-19. So this is something that has been brought on board, and it's going to be supported by the design that we are proposing for the for the next FinAccess in 2021. So much for the methodology. On the revisions to the 2021 questionnaire, as you can see, we continue to track the trends that incorporate new or revised questions to capture new innovations and track the impacts of 2019, as I was saying. And we are going to look at household welfare, the coping strategies, the livelihoods, the financial behavior, the consumer protection, the financial health. And also, we are going to introduce some MSME tracker. By MSME, we mean micro, small, and medium enterprises. So we are going to incorporate a survey within that FinAccess survey that we've been undertaking to also be able to track the effects of COVID-19 on MSMEs. So in this case, then, as I had said, this is going to be incorporated in the FinAccess sample. So aside from asking those questions relating to financial access, we are going to also have those questions relating to COVID-19. And this is an emerging issue, that is COVID-19 is an emerging issue. And we felt rather than just going with the questions on issues of financial access, there is need to also piggy ride or take advantage or leverage on the FinAccess 2021 so that we can be able to inform the government on these issues that are related to COVID-19. And that's why we edited or we added a few questions here and there to factor in or to take into account the issues relating to COVID-19. I think that being it, I take back the mic to Talam for him to take up the next person.
Thank you, James. Just on the instrument, I think we have been improving the instrument since 2006. And as you are aware, any survey is driven by the questionnaire. The richer the questionnaire, the better the data, and you will improve the quality. So what we have done over the years is that we have been enriching the instrument over the years. And the 2021 instrument will be much richer, given that there have been so many developments, so many disruptions. So there's so many new things that has happened. And also the country has experienced a number of shocks that has come up. And we want to capture these shocks, whether they are the floods, whether they are the COVID and all that. So some of these things are all to be captured, but subject to certain funding levels, because resources, the bigger the questionnaire, the more the resources. And I think the issue of the trackers is to really minimize the issue of having a huge survey at one go. The next slide is how the funding of these FinAccess surveys has taken over the years. And you find that the various surveys has been funded by various partners and private sector. The 206 was purely funded by FSD Kenya at a cost of 8.2 million, but it's mainly driven by the sample size, which gives us the accuracy of the population and the sample. The higher the sample, the better the representative of that population at various levels. All of us could wish that this survey could be taken to the ward level, but that means that there is more resources required. And this budget has been excluding the staff cost and time of the three partners, the consultancy service that we have used, and the various deep dive studies that we have conducted as earlier presented. We scheduled to conduct the 2021 survey between February and June 2021. However, we want to ensure that there is a sufficient sustainability of the future surveys and deep dive studies. And I think that's why we need to mobilize resources so that it gives us sufficient sustainability and ensuring that this is done. And the need for all of us, a multi-stakeholder partnership. And you notice that we estimate the budget to be around 110 or 111, excluding those exceptions of the staff cost and time, and consultancy services, deep dive studies. Next slide. Now, before I I talk on the proposed way forward. I think it's good to ask ourselves, why are certain people excluded? And what can we do in order to address these exclusions? Or what kind of strategies, decisions, business models, strategies, policies can be adapted to improve financial inclusion in Kenya? And also, what can we do to address certain challenges that are emerging in the market? So we want to develop an ecosystem, a financial ecosystem that addresses the aspirations of the national aspirations of the country, addresses the business needs, addresses the consumer needs, addresses the government needs. So all these are inbuilt within the financial sector development. So we need to address all this as we move forward. And also what needs to be done by who. And the need is that all of us have a stake in terms of the development of this financial ecosystem by coordination and a joint coordinated multi-stakeholder push. So, and that's why we are saying that going forward, we want to establish a wider public-private sector partnership, which will achieve the multi-stakeholder involvement in all spheres in terms of whether it's the government, whether it's the public sector, the private sector, or the citizens or the consumers, so that we can have a financial ecosystem that serves our needs. And most of you have seen the practical applications, is that big data and evidence base is going to drive innovations and the various delivery channels going forward. The second issue is how do we improve the usefulness and measurement of financial inclusion. So we want to enhance financial inclusion, measurement, and usefulness. And I think most of you will require that the data needs to be analyzed, to be more focused within the needs of various market segments. The other issue that we need to work on is the data analytics and capacity building. And I think most of the presenters in the past has addressed this, and some are willing to provide. But also we need to improve visualization and also in terms of communication, so that we are able to communicate and enhance the FinAccess data sets and this application. So we may want to create a platform where people can enhance the data analytics, enhance capacity building, enhance the visualization of those data sets or their reports or their analysis. And lastly is how to ensure that there is adequate and sustainable funding for the FinAccess survey in 2021 and future surveys, including deep dive studies. Remember, we say that the questionnaire instrument is so we cannot just put everything there. So we want to make sure that as the instrument for the survey is ongoing, we are able to slice certain specific thematic areas, whether it's SMEs, whether it's agriculture, and break it down and do specific segments for those deep dive studies on those areas. And it requires that we pool resources. The more we pool resources, it means that contribution by each partner or each stakeholder becomes less for all of us. So then there's need to have more people joining the public-private sector partnership. I think that at this stage, I want to, on behalf of CPK, FSD Kenya, KNBS, who are the three partners, and the other private sector who have participated in the past, we want to really welcome you to join the partnership so that we work together and develop this multi-stakeholder involvement. And also we welcome you to support the FinAccess in terms of investment in the 2021 FinAccess survey and future surveys, including the deep dive studies, which we can either generate from yourselves or from ourselves, and we push those stakeholder, those deep dive studies. So these dive studies are quite useful. The other issue is that in terms of the survey instrument, if you are interested to participate, you just get in touch with the FinAccess management team, and we shall invite you. There is a questionnaire technical committee, which normally reviews the instrument. So you are all invited to participate, those who are willing. So you can write to us, and we shall be able to invite you to participate in the survey instrument revision. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed, Talam, for the great insights. Ladies and gentlemen, we are progressing well, coming to the end of the webinar. But before we call it a day, allow me to, and in the interest of time, to invite Amrik here, who is the head of research at the FSD Kenya, to take us through the next session of Q&A. I've seen quite a good number of questions. I've also seen engagements on the chat. So Amrik here will be able to take us through that session as we come, as we close. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. And it's wonderful to see so much engagement. I'm not sure whether my video has started yet. Yes, wonderful to see so much engagement through the chat. We've had a couple of questions coming in from the Q&A as well. I would like to actually, some of the questions have already been answered in the chat and the Q&A, and some of them related to where the data would be available and whether we can send links to the presentations and contacts of presenters and so forth. So I just want to reiterate that we will be sending all the materials relating to this presentation to everybody after the webinar, and including other links to other research that's been done on FinAccess. There was another question from the Q&A, in fact posed by Kip Lagat from KBA. He asks whether we can actually perhaps think about conducting a panel survey on FinAccess to allow more dynamic, more insights really on the development of financial inclusion over time. This is something we've actually been considering, and we again would call for our partners here to actually assist us in sort of improving the resource base for the survey, so that we can consider adding in these new developments such as a panel. So I think if we come together as a partnership, there's actually lots of possibilities to develop the survey and include these new features. I don't see any other question on the Q&A, so I would like to open it to the audience. And if one or two of you would like to pose a question to us, I will direct it to the relevant speakers. I also realize we're running quite late, so I'm seeing some more things coming through on the chat relating to climate change, COVID-19. Of course, FinAccess cannot cover life, the universe, and everything, but I think there's many of these issues actually do come up in the survey. Please do unmute yourself and feel free to contribute a question if you would like. There's another couple of questions coming in as I'm waiting for people to contribute. Yeah, so on climate change, I mean, that's something we're not, that FinAccess is not really equipped to answer, but certainly COVID-19, we will have some very interesting data on that. And we have all the baseline data from the previous surveys. Somebody reiterates that a panel survey would be very useful. And somebody asks if we can contribute collaborate with the learning institutions like Kenyatta University. In fact, we have actually done a collaboration already with Kenyatta University to initiate a course on financial inclusion. And I'm being told by our CEO that attendees cannot unmute, so apologies for that. I didn't realize that. So those are the questions that have come through from the chat about more collaboration, the request for panel surveys, more information on COVID-19 in the forthcoming survey, and so forth. But what I'd like to do now, as I hand back to Mwangi, is also to encourage you to get in touch with us directly if you have questions. We're really excited to see so much interest in this work, and we would love to work with you all to develop it further. Thank you. I'm handing back to Mwangi now.
Thank you very much, Amrika, for the good handling of that Q&A session. That was fast, and we were able to save a few more minutes. And looking at the time, we want to close in the next 5 minutes. But before we do that, I invite our communication team to send the last question, to pose the last question on the screen. so that we get more information on the topics that you may be interested in. And just in case you were not able to start with us, and as mentioned by Amrik, we'll be able to share all the materials. And secondly, for those who are with us even now, we are still live on FSD Kenya YouTube channel, and also on hashtag FinAccess and the YouTube itself. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Allow the communication team to post the last question. I'm made to understand that there is no other question. So that being the case, allow me now to take this opportunity to request that we have the closing remarks being given by none other than Collins Omondi, who is the Director of Macroeconomic Statistics. He will be able to share with us his remarks. Over to you.
Good afternoon. I'm not Mr. Omondi, Collins Omondi. I'm sitting on behalf of Mr. Collins Omondi, the Director for Macroeconomic Statistics, KNBS. Mr. Collins at the moment is the Acting Director General. Having the sitting DG going to terminal leave. So these are some of the changes that are going to happen at the KNBS. So we're expecting probably new changes at the KNBS. But all the same, my name is Benjamin Awusevwa. I'm a Senior Manager at KNBS in Macroeconomic Statistics. KNBS welcomes these kind of engagements with the stakeholders in statistics. As an statistical institution, we appreciate this Datafest that has brought us together in this data ecosystem. From the various presentations, it has been very clear that the FinAccess data is really interesting to look at. KNBS, Kenya National Bureau of Statistics, as the coordinator of the National Statistical System, encourages this kind of collaborations between various stakeholders in this data ecosystem to leverage on emerging trends, especially in this era of big data and the emergence of data science. This collaboration, we appreciate that has widened, that now it includes the private sector and other data providers and data analytics that has made us possible to pull together the technical capacities that we have now witnessed. And of course, what we have seen in terms of doing the surveys, the financial and the human resources for better turnaround time in production and dissemination of quality statistics. As you know, quality data result in better lives. FinAccess is one example of success stories in collaborations in matters of statistics. We are very grateful for the close partnership between the CBK and FSD and its partners in making sure that we have quality statistics to support financial policies. Since the exception of the first survey on FinAccess in 2006. In this webinar, we are very happy that we have the invitation of the private sector who have demonstrated the power of data science in only not showing the surface data that we see in our normal data dissemination, but insights, bringing into issues that are more interesting to statisticians. And I'm happy to have noticed that even factor analysis in statistics is being used to compare different variables, which is really proud as a teacher to see these things happening in the normal data in official statistics. Sorry for my Zoom, it's like getting out, but now I think I'm on, Mr. Mangi.
Yes, you're still with us. Please carry on.
I'm still with you. So we, as I say, that the KNBS is very happy and proud to these good relationships with the partners and matter statistics. And we are now open for any other partnerships that we will engage with, so that we bring together more stakeholders that will help us in terms of the technical capacities, funding, and even human resource. Production and utilization of core statistics has been seen in the way we have done this Datafest. So without boring you, because people are going for lunch, I would want to say that KNBS is committed to the application of best practices in measurement of financial inclusion throughout the country and in engaging all relevant stakeholders. I thank all the participants for making this workshop very interesting and the kind of the presentation we have seen. And we wish to see this one even in the future. With this, I want to say thank you very much and God bless.
Thank you very much, Benjamin Ruzevoa. And without belaboring the closing remarks by Benjamin, allow me to share something small on the contacts. So if you need information on any of the topics, kindly type in your email address indicating the area of interest and further follow-up. You could also get in touch with us through research@centralbank.go.ke. You could also reach us on 020-286-3200. I repeat, in case you have an issue or you may want to follow up on this and the partnership, you could contact us on research@centralbank.go.ke. Alternatively, you could call via 020-286-3200. Thank you very much indeed. In terms of the questions and answers, let's continue interacting. We are free and available for you. Thank you very much.